what about the control of the nuclear weapons? And that kind of is the sum of all fears, if you will, that something like the Taliban, or worse yet, al-Qaida indirectly back at that time, would have some control or have access to nuclear weapons.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله والقور الشعب. ترازير الشاط والكود رزاف تشاود وايل كوي من القور. وشاجين قد وايل كوي من القور.
Policy disaster. John Bolton, remember him? Senior figure in foreign policy in the Trump administration. John Bolton blasting Biden's handling of Afghanistan, and he's warning that 150 nuclear weapons could fall into the hands of the Taliban. Katie McFarland, former Trump Deputy National Security Advisor, is with me. Are these nukes possibly coming from Pakistan?
Yeah, I mean, what he's talking about is that the current guys running Afghanistan, the Taliban, are very closely connected to Pakistan. They're called the Haqqani network. Now, when the Biden administration was, quote, negotiating our withdrawal, they weren't negotiating with these bad guys. They were negotiating with different Taliban guys, assuming those Taliban guys, the good Taliban guys, were going to be in charge of Afghanistan once we left. That's not what happened. The bad guys, the Haqqani network, the most ruthless, violent Taliban group and tribe, closely connected to Pakistan, they're now the guys running things. So the worry is that not only have we left behind weapons that now make Afghanistan one of the most well-armed and most modern equipped military in the world, but they're closely tied to Pakistan. They're the cousins, they're the brothers, they're the same tribe. And Pakistan has 150 nuclear weapons.
Well, if the Taliban got hold of any one of these weapons, that's a nightmare. I mean, do you consider it at all likely that that could happen?
Look, it's not going to happen in the sense of Pakistan saying, here, have some nukes, go do your foreign policy. It happens, as a lot of things happen in the Middle East. Subterfuge, lies, deals that you never really see coming. What I'm much more concerned with is that we have now created, by our own fiasco and shambolic evacuation, we have now created a Pakistan-Afghanistan combination, which is well-armed, very definitely anti-American, very closely tied to all sorts of terrorist groups, and now has access to nuclear weapons. It's not just Afghanistan and Pakistan, Stuart. They're really part of the same group. Historically, they were the same country. And the tribes that's running both countries are the really worst of the worst.
The Taliban have begun executions again. And we're learning that those still hiding in Afghanistan could wait to be airlifted out years and years and years. Unfortunately, look, the news cycle has moved on. We don't hear about this any longer. The news cycle is past Afghanistan. It's almost past the border. It's now on to Hell Week. I mean, we're just dismissing the real terrible problems of Afghanistan.
Stuart, I find this is the sort of most cynical, upsetting part of a very upsetting administration, the Biden administration. They looked at Afghanistan and they knew it was a mess. They didn't think it would be as bad as it was, but their attitude was, well, once the reporters are gone, once the cameras aren't running, nobody's going to pay attention. They're not going to see the beheadings and all of the terrible stuff the Taliban government in Afghanistan are doing. It's sort of yesterday's news. And I think it's the same attitude with the border. where they weren't allowing reporters there. They weren't allowing drone overhead photography of what was going on at the border. Why? Because they think that if they can squish the news, if they can take it off the headlines, take the pictures out of the consciousness of the American people, they'll get away with it.
Why should we be prevented from advancement in nuclear technology?
Terrorists getting their hands on a weapon of mass destruction like a nuclear weapon. We have no doubt they use it.
The US Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, has stated that the US withdrawal from Afghanistan and the subsequent takeover by the Taliban has increased the risk to regional stability and the security of Pakistan's nuclear arsenal. This is not the first time that Pakistan's control of its nuclear program has been questioned. Governed by a shaky coalition of ineffective politicians and beset by a military trying to contain both democracy and domestic terrorism, Pakistan is the definition of an unstable state. It could easily totter and collapse, leaving an arsenal of 200 nuclear warheads in the hands of rogue military elements, or even worse, jihadis. 28 May 1998, Pakistan conducted its first nuclear tests. Today, it's celebrated annually as Yawm-e-Takbir, Pakistan's Day of Greatness. For the Pakistani people, the atomic weapon came as a symbol of national achievement and power. Instead, it brought crippling sanctions and condemnation. Pakistan became a pariah state. At home, Pakistan paid for its tryst with fanaticism. It sees itself as the only nation created in the name of Islam. And Pakistan's nuclear weapons are often called the Islamic bombs. Pakistan's civil society stands fractured with massive support for Islamic extremism. The armed forces, recognized as the only effective institutions in the country, have become increasingly radicalized. Most of its generals began their careers during Zia-ul-Haq's push for Pakistan's Islamization. Highly trained Pakistani army officers, both serving and retired, have been known for their sympathies for extremist ideologies. They have also volunteered their expertise in Afghanistan. The premier intelligence agency ISI has fostered extremist outfits, some of whom have now turned upon Pakistan itself. The country has seen over 63,000 deaths at the hand of extremists. Even today, Pakistan's restive northwest is overrun by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. These elements have been further galvanized by the success of the Taliban in Afghanistan. Pakistan's nuclear program has also gained notoriety. Hailed as heroes in Pakistan, its leaders, such as Dr. Yahya Khan, sold nuclear technology to states like North Korea, Iran and Libya. Analysts have questioned Pakistan's control of its nuclear apparatus, the loyalty of the forces guarding them, and the intent of the generals commanding them. Pakistan is struggling with economic and political problems, public unrest due to societal corruption, and domestic terrorists raring to seize power. Just one misstep and nuclear-armed extremists may well destroy the world as we know it.
What are the risks if the Taliban gain access to nuclear weapons? It is not a far-fetched hypothesis that the Taliban may turn to nuclear and chemical weapons in the coming decades to maintain their power and system. Therefore, at the end of this section, we will explore hypotheses about the dangers that may arise should the Taliban gain access to atomic weapons. The proliferation of atomic and chemical weapons among terrorist groups. One of the most dangerous consequences of the Taliban accessing nuclear weapons is the transfer of that knowledge among other terrorist groups, including al-Qaida and their allies. This could escalate the scale of conflicts and sensitivities of terrorist groups, especially for the countries in that region, and the casualties caused by these weapons could be deadlier and more enduring. It is notable that the Taliban currently have overt and covert communications with various terrorist groups, of which the most important include al-Qaida, Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, the Haqqani Network, the Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, and the East Turkestan Islamic Movement. Threat to the national security of neighboring countries. One of the Taliban's recent actions has been the establishment of jihadi schools, large and small across Afghanistan. The educational nature of these schools is still unclear. It is perceived that these schools, under the guise of teaching religious sciences, promote extremist beliefs and Taliban ideology. On the other hand, the Taliban is the first regime to employ suicide bombers in its army. Previous actions and statements from Taliban leaders regarding military attacks against Iran and the conquest of Tehran and Khorasan, depicting half of Pakistan's land as part of Afghanistan's map, or imposing Sharia globally through foreign jihad, as stated by Hibatullah Akhundzada. Such actions clearly pose threats to the neighboring countries and could, if tensions escalate, encourage extreme Taliban groups to use these weapons. The Taliban's bolder stance with access to nuclear weapons is not far from reality. This can be seen practically in the behavior of North Korea. The Taliban becoming bolder with the acquisition of nuclear weapons happens in various ways. For example, disregard for international laws, increasing border tensions and threatening other countries, irresponsibility in the use of weapons, and acts that may be carried out against its own people or other nations. It is crucial for the international community to prevent the potential threat of the Taliban's access to nuclear or chemical weapons and to remain vigilant on this issue. Measures include imposing pressures and sanctions, diplomatic actions, increasing the security of arsenals and nuclear centers, especially in Pakistan, and striving to restore the International Atomic Energy Agency's oversight of Afghanistan's nuclear activities.